Weyland-Yutani is a large conglomerate corporation known as the Company. It is one of the many mega-corporations that runs the human colonies outside the solar system through the Extrasolar Colonization Administration, has a seat in the Interstellar Commerce Commission's Company Review Board, and also has a large presence on Earth. They hold their main offices in Tokyo, San Francisco, the Sea of Tranquility, and Thaddeus. Weyland-Yutani consistently exhibits the worst aspects of corporate profiteering, seeming willing to sacrifice decency and human life in pursuit of profit. The corporation has consistently ordered its employees and agents to attempt to obtain living xenomorphs so that they can be exploited as a biological weapon without regard for their obtainers' lives. At some point in the 21st century, the British corporation Weyland Corp eventually merged with the Japanese company Yutani Corporation and became the antecedents to the Weyland-Yutani Conglomerate Corporation. In 2122, the commercial hauler Nostromo was on its way to Earth from a job in the Solomons. The Nostromo passed through the Zeta II Reticuli system, and the Nostromo's onboard computer, MU-Thur, intercepted a distress beacon originating from a planetoid which later came to be known as Acheron within close proximity to the ship. The crew members are awakened prematurely from their hypersleep. The crew responded to the beacon and landed the Nostromo on the planetoid. Executive Officer Kane was impregnated by a parasitic life form discovered within an ancient derelict spacecraft found on the planet's surface. Kane was taken back to the Nostromo for medical treatment, only to die hours later when the creature that was impregnated within him grew and burst violently out of his chest while being witnessed by the entire crew. Weyland-Yutani gave orders to Science Officer Ash and Mother to implement Special Order 937 and ensure the survival of the xenomorph specimen at any cost, and deemed the rest of the Nostromo's crew expendable. The Nostromo was destroyed during the incident, and all of its crew were killed by the xenomorph except for Ellen Ripley, who managed to escape on an emergency vessel and ultimately killed the xenomorph. In December of 2137, Weyland-Yutani purchased Sevastopol Station, a decommissioned trading and manufacturing spaceport in the Zeta Reticuli system, formerly owned by the Seegson Corporation. At the time of the purchase, Sevastopol had a small number of xenomorphs within the bowels of its structure, and the company, aware of this, bought the for-sale station to acquire the specimens located there. Another reason for the purchase was so the company would be able to modify the core programming of Seegson's Apollo AI control system for Sevastopol, uploading Special Order 939, which allowed the AI to cut off communications off-station and preserve any alien specimens. On December 11, 2137, Sevastopol's orbital stabilizers were damaged by an explosion from the nearby Anesidora, causing the station to fall out of orbit and eventually burn up in the atmosphere of gas giant KG-348, killing the xenomorphs remaining on the station. Investigation on LV-426. 57 years later, in 2179, Weyland-Yutani representative Carter J. Burke gave orders to Hadley's Hope, a human colony that was established by Weyland-Yutani on Acheron, to investigate the ruins of the derelict spacecraft. They had learned of its location from Ripley, who was rescued after spending the last 57 years adrift in space in hypersleep since her first horrific encounter with the xenomorph. Evidenced from her testimony regarding the Nostromo's destruction, the colonists eventually found the derelict and discovered thousands of xenomorph eggs in suspended animation. Soon the eggs began to hatch and facehuggers started to impregnate the colonists. The colony was eventually overrun by the xenomorphs. After the mysterious loss of contact with the colony, Weyland-Yutani sent the colonial Marines to investigate, as well as sending Ripley to assist the Marines in the mission. Burke, however, was given a secret objective to ensure the capture of a xenomorph specimen. The colonial Marines eventually came in contact with the xenomorphs and suffered massive casualties due to the creature's several advantages, including the element of surprise. The survivors decided to take off and nuke the colony from orbit. They called the dropship for immediate evacuation. However, an alien stowaway on the dropship killed the pilots, causing the dropship to crash into the processing station, causing major damage from which it became unstable and would detonate with the force of a thermonuclear weapon. While the survivors took refuge in the medical station, Ripley and Newt, a survivor that was rescued by the Marines earlier, fell asleep in the medical laboratory and were attacked by two facehuggers that Burke had released from their tanks. Ripley was able to alert the Marines who rescued them and killed the creatures. Ripley then accused Burke of trying to impregnate her and Newt to get two alien creatures past Earth's quarantine procedures, and also planning to kill the rest of the Marines while in hypersleep during the return trip back to Earth. The xenomorphs then cut the electricity and killed most of the survivors, including Burke. Ripley, along with the remaining survivors, were able to escape the colony via dropship, and escape moments before the colony was consumed by the nuclear blast caused by the atmosphere process. Weyland-Yutani sent a group of researchers led by Michael Bishop and an elite Special Forces unit to Fiorina, 161, after the company was contacted by Francis Aaron regarding the presence of the xenomorph. Michael tried to convince Ripley to surrender so that they could extract the queen embryo within her. Ripley chose to sacrifice herself in order to keep the company from getting their hands on the xenomorph and jumped into the molten Lade. Aaron was killed after assaulting Michael. Morse was relocated and Weyland-Yutani terminated the prison's contract. The remaining functional lead works apparatus was scrapped, and the Fiorina 161 correctional unit was closed for an indefinite period. Operation on LV-426. Despite failing to retrieve the queen embryo from Ripley, Michael decided to board the USS Sulaco to figure out its previous destination in hopes of locating the xenomorph hive on LV-426. Michael and his research team managed to locate the hive within the ruins of the Hadley's Hope colony and established a research facility to begin capturing xenomorph specimens for research purposes. 200 years later, USM researcher Mason Wren stated that Weyland-Yutani had been bought out by Walmart decades ago. His comment, "Fortunes of War," suggests a serious conflict between the United Americas and the Third World Empire, as evidenced by the devastated Paris. Consequently, an interstellar military force called United Systems Military now controls all the weapons and R&D interests previously held by Weyland-Yutani. The Bioweapons Division was a special department of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, which dealt with the research and development of biological and viral weapons. And one of their primary goals was to obtain a face-hugger, mature xenomorph, or a chest-burster, which were preferred in some cases because they were easier to sneak past quarantine within their hosts. Their attempts to get one frequently involved lying or putting lives at risk just for their goals. Ellen Ripley would inevitably become a threat to this division after foiling every single one of the attempts to acquire a xenomorph. The work of this division was still carried out by the United Systems Military after the corporation's demise, and would later fall foul of Ripley 8, a clone of the original Ellen Ripley. Weyland-Yutani held other divisions of interest devoted to such areas as media. Weyland-Yutani's involvement with the Extrasolar Colonial Administration, ECA, hints at a heavy influence with not only the United Americas Aerospace Command, but also the Third World Empire Combined Service, as they sent a Conestoga-class battleship carrying a contingent of British Marine commandos to retrieve Lieutenant Ripley on Fiorina 161. The commandos were then seen with a couple of heavily suited men carrying pulse rifles. It's clear that those troops were not USCM, as they spoke with an English accent. Additionally, Weyland-Yutani co-financed Hadley's Hope with the Colonial Administration, a group which seems to be involved in all colonial activities, and thus the Colonial Marines, which may imply that there was some sort of connection between the two groups. If Weyland-Yutani doesn't have actual ownership of the core itself, the company at least owns stock and/or finances it, allowing them to basically make the core available for their own personal use.